Imam Hussain made an uprising that was of unusual greatness and sanctity. The uprising of Imam Hussain possessed all the characteristics that make an uprising sacred, so much so that it is without a parallel in the entire history of the world. But why is it so sacred? Today, we understand fully the character of Yazid and the implications of his rule. We know what Muawiyah did and what were the schemes of the Umayyads. But the Muslims of that era, 99% of them, did not understand these things, especially due to the absence of the media and mass communication which exists nowadays. The people of Medina did not understand the situation that existed. They came to know the character of Yazid and the implications of his caliphate when Hussein ibn Ali was killed. Imam Hussein had to be killed, and the Muslim world had to receive such an enormous shock so that hundreds of people in Medina, Kufa, and other places may open their eyes and say that Imam Hussain was right in saying what he said. After the event of Karbala, hundreds of people revolted against the Umayyad regime in order to avenge the blood of Imam Hussain, the most famous of which was Mukhtar. But that was just the immediate effect. The purpose of Imam Hussein's movement is much more universal and timeless than that. He made a movement that was like a flash of light in the midst of surrounding darkness, and the Imam himself gave us the reason for his movement in very clear terms so that there would be no room for doubt or confusion. He said, "Our society has become corrupt, and the ummah of my grandfather has become immoral. I have risen up to carry out reform, and I am a reformer." Then, on another occasion, he said, "I have risen up to carry out ammar bil ma'ruf, to revive the faith, and to struggle against corruption. My movement is one which is Islamic and aimed at reform." But what we say is something else. We have made two ignorant manipulations. In one of these cases, we said that Hussein ibn Ali rose in order to be killed for the sake of the atonement of the sins of the Ummah. Now, if someone were to ask us as to the source of this notion, whether it was Imam Hussain himself who said such a thing, or if it was the Prophet or some Imam, we cannot cite any authority. But still, we keep on insisting that Imam Hussain got killed so that our sins are forgiven. I don't know whether we have borrowed this notion from Christianity, because Muslims have also adopted other ideas from Christianity which are very contrary to Islam. One of the most important concepts of Christianity is the notion of the crucifixion of Christ as a sacrifice made for the sake of the atonement of man's sins. Jesus is called the sacrifice, and it is an essential part of the Christian doctrine that Jesus went upon the cross for atoning the sins of his people. They have made Jesus carry the burden of their sins. By God, it is a slander if we ascribe such a thing to Imam Hussain. We claim that Imam Hussain founded an insurance company to guarantee security to the sinners. He has insured us against the consequences of sin in return for our tears. All that we have to do is shed tears for him, and in return he guarantees immunity to the sinners. Now one could be whatever one liked to be. One could be an Ibn Ziyad or Umar ibn Sa'd or Huli. Imam Hussain wanted that the likes of Huli and Umar ibn Sa'd should increase in the world, and so he came and announced, "O people, be as evil as you can be, for I am your security." There is a second misrepresentation. According to it, Imam Hussain made an uprising and was killed in order to carry out a special order that was solely addressed to him. He was told to go and get martyred, so his action does not relate to us, and it is not something which can be followed and emulated. It does not relate to those precepts of Islam which are general and universal. See what a great difference there is between what the Imam is declaring and what we say. Imam Hussain cried out for the causes and motives of his uprising are matters that coincide with the general principles of Islam. There is no need for a special order. After all, special orders are given in situations where the general prescription is not adequate. Imam Hussain declared in very clear terms that Islam is a religion that does not permit any believer. He did not use the word Imam, he said believer. Islam is a religion that does not permit any believer to remain indifferent in the face of oppression, injustice, and sin. Imam Hussain established a practical ideology, which is the same as the ideology of Islam. Islam had set forth its principles, and Imam Hussain put them into effect. We have stripped this event of its ideological character. When it is stripped of its ideological character, it is no more capable of being followed. And when it cannot be followed, one cannot make any use of Imam Hussein's teaching and draw any lesson from the event of Karbala. Some also say that Imam Hussain was murdered without any guilt at Karbala at the hands of a group of aggressors, and this was the tragedy. It is true that Imam Hussain was killed without any guilt, but is this all there is to the event? That an innocent person was murdered by a group of aggressors? Every day, 1,000 innocent people are killed and wiped out throughout the world by criminals, and this is of course a very tragic fact. But does this kind of death have such a value that one should go on expressing sorrow over it and continue to mourn it year after year for thousands of years, expressing sorrow and regretting that Hussain ibn Ali was killed without guilt and that his innocent blood was shed for no reason? But who can dare say that Imam Hussain ibn Ali's death was in vain and his blood was shed uselessly? If one can find anyone in the whole world who did not allow one drop of his blood to be wasted, that is Imam Hussain ibn Ali. If you can find anyone in the whole world who did not let one particle of his personality go to waste, it is Imam Hussain. He set such a high value for every single drop of his blood that it is undescribable. If you take into account the amount of wealth that has been and is spent for his sake and will continue to be spent until the day of judgment, you will see that humanity has spent billions and trillions for every drop of his blood. Can anyone say that such a man wasted his life, whose death forever and ever sends out tremors through the castles of the oppressors? That his blood went in vain? Is his martyrdom sad for us because Hussain ibn Ali was killed in vain? You insult Hussain ibn Ali when you say that his life was lost in vain. The Imams have commanded us to keep alive the tradition of mourning over Hussain ibn Ali because his goal was a sacred goal. Imam Hussain established a school, and they wanted his school to remain alive and flourish. You will not find a practical school of thought in the whole world that may be likened to that of Hussain ibn Ali. During those ordeals, during those extreme hardships, Imam Hussain taught us the meaning of Tawheed, of faith, of the knowledge of God, of affection, convinced faith in the other world, of submission, of fortitude and manliness, of self-contentment, of steadiness and steadfastness, of honor and dignity, of the love and quest for freedom, of concern for mankind, of the passion to serve humanity. Keeping alive the memory of his name and his movement is for the purpose that our spirits may be illuminated by the light of the spirit of Imam Hussain. If a tear that we shed should signify a harmony between our souls and his spirit, it represents a brief light that our spirit makes along with Imam Hussein's spirit. Should it create within us a little glow of his valor, a particle of his free nature, a particle of his faith, or a particle of his piety, and a small spark of his tawheed, such a tear has an infinite value. They have said that it has the worth of an entire world, even if it is as small as the wing of a fly. Believe it. But that is not a tear shed for a pointless death, but a tear for the greatness of Imam Hussain and his great spirit, a tear that signifies harmony with Hussain ibn Ali and of following his sacred footsteps.